Welcome to Inner Light, where we illuminate the path to personal growth and conscious living. Today's guest, Bradley Taylor, is an entrepreneur whose journey began with donuts and grew into building businesses that empower communities. From food trucks to real estate education for BIPOC and queer entrepreneurs, Bradley combines grit, creativity, and self awareness to teach how boundaries and intentional choices create lasting success. Welcome to the show, Bradley. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure being here, and I'm really excited about the conversations that are going to unfold.
Mhm. Yeah. So, Bradley, you talk a lot about power of self-awareness. How did developing this skill shape your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think having self-awareness is very important just because it really helps it helps provide a really good roadmap and ways of how you navigate certain situations and scenarios that present themselves to you. And I think for myself, personally, intentionally working on self-awareness has really helped shape the way I've moved my decision making. And it also really just kind of forecasting out like the impact of what those decisions and so forth that will happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. And was there a pivotal moment when self-awareness changed the way you make decisions?
Yeah, I think probably one of the things that came out of it, the most important things that came out of it was really just my social circle of the people who I was affiliated with. You know, when I started the business, it was kind of like I was still in college, just graduated, and my partner was still in college, and kind of bringing that same mental like post college thought process to into like the real world, especially as we're starting and growing this business. I wasn't aware of like how the people you kept around you really could like affect how you worked, like if I was like, hey, I have to stay late and fulfill this order. And I have friends who were like, dude, like, we're about to go out. It's Friday night. What are you doing? Um, I would kind of battle between those two and sometimes would choose to go out. But then, like, it just got to the point where I was like, I'm not moving anywhere. Like, my business isn't really going. If anything, it's kind of just like, bogging me down. And I just had to come to a self realization that, like, dude, the people that you're choosing to hang out with and how you're kind of moving and burning uh, the candle at both ends is not going to work. So I just had to come to like this realization of self that was like, something's got to change and just start turning inward to myself. And that's where really the crux of everything started to turn from there.
Yeah, that's inspiring. It reminds us that understanding ourselves is the first step to shaping the world around us.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
And boundaries seem central to your approach. How do you define healthy boundaries in both business and personal lives?
Yeah, I think really just through communicating very like in a very clear, transparent manner. And that could be verbally and non-verbally, In a verbal aspect, I would say just kind of telling people, and some just saying this is kind of what I have going on, where I'm kind of doing this and this is the framework of like what's going on in my regimen, my schedule, how I work in that feedback loop of what I kind of mentioned previously. And I like if you are coming in and you're interrupting me in a way that is almost disrespectful to not and not really taking into consideration of the things that I just told you about that I have to do to make sure that are important to myself. You kind of habitually like kind of just disregard those in some type of manner. Um, I think for one, that shows your character, and two, that also signals to me that you're not really someone who I kind of want to affiliate in at all, or really just within a certain capacity. And then non-verbally, in that way of setting boundaries is if you see me working and moving a certain way, like I think that's also really important because I'm trying to find a way to contextualize this. But it's like if you see me working, you see me progressing and are working on like a project or something that's really important, and you just come in and kind of subconsciously or on purpose kind of jump those boundaries where you don't take in consideration of what I'm doing first. And it's more about like coming from you and on you, then that right there kind of flags that in some type of way that I still might find that you're disregarding a lot of those boundaries in which I'm setting that might not tell you straight to your face in a very transparent way, but just through my body language and so forth. It's like, hey, I'm doing something, I got this going on, and I need you to just respect that because I need this space overall. I need this space to really like work, focus on myself. And then also too, how that bleeds into family and just your overall personal like being, you know? So having to protect those space and setting those boundaries is like the foundation of how you work and sets the pace of how, you know, you go about life. So yeah, otherwise you just get burnt out because people sometimes they do it on purpose, sometimes they don't, or they don't know that they're how much energy that they're like kind of requiring of you and sucking from you, you know, and you have to protect that, especially as an entrepreneur, because so many things like are not rigid and things just always change on the fly. So you always need to protect your boundaries to have that space and bandwidth to be able to address matters as they come up and change on in real time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And what happens when we neglect them, like even unintentionally?
When we neglect those, I think it's like this. I always say like it's always the little things that really matter because those little things tend to compound very quickly when uh and show up always at the wrong time at the right moments, you know. And like if you're not really being operating with a high sense of self-awareness and setting those boundaries, those little things will tend to pile up, and when you hold them in or they always come out sideways, and that can really result in some type of like self detonation, and it doesn't look right where it's like, hey, because of that, like I just blew up and I'm stressed, and something has to fall usually with that, and that could be like your relationship with your friends, your family, and the degradation of that, or like in business and losing like contracts, partnerships, or just like overall just loss. It's important to have to be aware of those things because those little things are not like those are the quiet killers.
Yeah, it's striking. Boundaries aren't walls, that the framework for sustainable growth and respect.
Yes, no, I wholeheartedly agree. You know, when you can always like feel it, you know, when you meet someone or talk or engage with someone who really abides by those standards and have a good awareness of self and strong boundaries, it's like this silent, like this quiet kind of just energy that you're just like that your body will naturally also just like kind of respond to. And you're like, whoa, like for some reason I'm like carrying myself different. I'm kind of watching myself a little bit more like, and when you start to engage with those people, you're like, okay, I see. And that's for someone who is kind of usually has some sense of self-awareness, you know. And that's why I say like sometimes people who will notice that and just still completely disregard that is like, oh, okay, like you're definitely someone like this engagement is going to be very brief, or like I just cannot engage with you in this type of scenario or capacity. Maybe like if it was more fun, I don't know. Sure, more light, but like still overall, I'm not really feeling this.
Yeah, definitely. And you have built ventures like the Donut Trap and Colors with community in mind. How do boundaries support creating positive feedback loops, like within teams or communities?
It's good to establish those feedback loops because that is the system of what that encases the ecosystem of these different businesses and entities and organizations that you've built. And it's like almost like the driver, you know, for the donut shop, it starts with like, for example, having a good feedback loop of communication and addressing things like that might happen or are going to happen. So, like, for example, I can give, like, let's say if we had a huge catering order and it's like 1,000 donuts, and first having that communicating, in a very positive way, but like, hey, team, we have this huge order. You guys are super capable of doing so, and you have done well and performed well outside of everything and meeting expectations and above that. We have this huge catering order that's coming. It's 4,000 donuts. Here's what's going on. These are the expectations of when they need to be like uphold the standard of product quality and service, and they need to be delivered at this time, this place, contact, and they need to be ready at this time. And reinforce it by like just giving them good kudos, as I said previously. But within that, always set the expectation of like this what needs to be met. You guys are awesome, and the delivery and time as well. And then having that loop, it goes back to a loop of, let's say, like if something happens during that production, if like say they burnt a couple of donuts or so, by still having that positive feedback loop, it's like, hey, let's address it. Let's make sure that we're accountable. Let's find the root cause of that. And let's establish like where we could go from there and maybe what else to look for so something like this doesn't happen, but do it in a very positive way where it gives the person, freedom and space to really not feel like, hey, they're being scolded in some type of way, but really acknowledge in a healthy way of like, hey, okay, this is what happened. I could see now that I'm turning back, I can see what happened. I maybe didn't hear the timer, or I set the timer somewhere like randomly when I was busy in between other tasks. And let me just make sure that I put that at the top of my list, because like we said, those little things are the things that will compound and show up at the worst moment at the right time. And that resulted in, let's say, 300 donuts that easily been burnt. That's what that equates to a lot of money, within a matter of minutes, in that window. And just acknowledge that. And it's like, okay, cool. Thank you for that. I feel better. Like, I don't feel like, dude, man, I messed up, all this. And just coming back out of that and just goes back in a loop. And we just keep that going and keep addressing that. And then that also flexes in certain ways of like space to space as well, depending on what the priority of that situation is. But it's all about really just having a really good, healthy feed and balance of how to really, that's like almost like a gumbo pot of self awareness, boundaries, communication, and all those different factors. But just it's all in loop.
Yeah, I love that. And can a leader model boundaries without alienating others?
Can a leader have boundaries without alienating others? I think, yeah, for sure. For myself, I know there are certain boundaries, like as a leader for my companies, that there are certain things that like I won't engage with like my employees with, in that like conversations and stuff like that, where it's like, okay, you guys could do that amongst yourselves, but as like your boss, I can't engage in these different things, and them respecting that. It's like, yeah, you're right. And then, hey, you're a boss, that doesn't look right. That's not a like we and as mutual respects, like us as employees, I don't want to put you in that situation. And as myself, it's like I don't want to put that myself in that situation too as well. Because that can jeopardize or compromise, all of our relationships, the business. And yeah, I mean, we've seen it play out so many different times, on on the news with different CEOs and other like leaders, world leaders or so. So definitely, it's possible to have um, boundaries as a leader and not really alienate people, and communicating that to other people as well. Whether it be your employees, but like, hey, I love you. We could do all this, talk about this, stuff. But in the end of the day, this is like kind of about the window of our relationship, and there can still be a lot of cool stuff within that window, even if it seems restricted. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, that's a powerful lesson. Like that respect for self fuels respect and productivity in others too.
Hmm. I wholeheartedly agree.
And from food trucks to workforce training programs, you have pivoted multiple times. How does self awareness guide you during transitions or uncertainty?
Yeah, I think self-awareness really just being understanding of what is going on, what's needed in this particular scenario. There's like, for instance, if there's a scenario where something like a motivation needs to be brought in for the team, it's not your moment to make it about you. It's to make it about them. And it's, and if we work hours or so, we just need to get over like this project and kind of just like X that off and just complete it. And we've already worked tirelessly on something. It's like I'm not going to come in motivating the team about myself and making it about me. Like do self awareness, it's like, oh, it's not about you, Bradley. It's about this situation and them in this moment. So let's like give a nice pep talk, our motivation statement about how good they're doing and how close and how far we got it, and how like awesome that you guys have been able to rise and consistently rise to this occasion while like growing, and challenging you guys selves. Like before, think about it, like a couple weeks ago, we thought this was almost like impossible, but yet here we are doing it and you're like you're almost there. And think of the growth that like I've seen and that you guys probably like felt. That's amazing. And I like and just being proud of them. So understanding that and be able to approach that and use that in different situations, it has really worked well.
Yeah, and do you rely more on intuition, experience, or data when making those calls?
I would say it's very situational because every time, everything is always so different. But what I think I've noticed is really what happened is really just intuition and feeling that and using that kind of as my post of which how I want to direct and prioritize whatever situation's going on and influence how I will approach and engage with that situation too as well. It's yeah. I'm sorry.
That balance of heart and strategy shows that reflection is just as critical as action.
Oh yeah. It's you have to have balance. You have to have balance. And then as you said on your like really be able to reflect on that, I think that's really one of the most important segments of like during that phase of really like growth, self-awareness and so forth, because you're really just looking back at and replaying what's going on, like seeing like a visual movie. You're like, oh, okay, I could have done that there. I could have done this there. That looks great. Let's work on that more. I call it like my self auditing kind of time. And that's where like that window of time is where I see most of my growth and like processes and involvement really happen.
Yes, definitely. And for listeners looking to build their own positive feedback loops in life or business, what's the first practical step they can take today?
And in creating positive feedback loops in business,
Yes, business or personal life.
yeah. I would say really the foundation is just self-awareness because you can't move until you really understand your inner self and your being. I always tell like when I coach and mentor different entrepreneurs, I'm like, before you really get into business or start to grow something, you really have to understand yourself. Because what will happen is like the business is a reflection of you. And like we always say, it's like birthing a baby, all those genes and like habits and stuff are all wired into like that genetic code of what comes up about as your business. And if you have these habits and like ways it's just gonna show up in your business from the culture of your staff to the way you try to from the partnerships and so forth that you cultivate as it grows. And the scary thing is like if it really takes off, it's just gonna validate. You're just gonna have this weird sense of validation that's like, hey, I'm a butthead or whatever, but my business is still growing and I don't really care. I'm just gonna become more of a butthead. And then it doesn't matter at some point it's going to blow up in your face. But if you are along that curve, as you're going up and also going through your downs, if you're continuously working on yourself and creating these different positive feedback loops, that will create a really smooth compounding factor that goes in an upward trajectory where you're really feeding into yourself, understanding like the nuances and tranches of like what the bottom and challenges look like, and then coming back out of that in a new person and a clear perspective of how to deal with these different scenarios. And then on to the next, like bigger and better thing. So it's really important to have that sense of self while going into business, being in business, starting a business in all facets. Because like I said, in the end, if you're not the best you, it's going to, your business is going to reflect that and it's going to be amplified. And that's a lot that can come back at you in a good way or a bad way. So you don't have the capacity to deal with it in a positive, to, capacity to process it and deal with it in a positive manner is very key.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how can we maintain momentum when challenges test their boundaries?
Mm, having a good sense of self, you know, like when you have a good sense of self, it's like, and you've been tested previously and you've seen, and the outcome of that has usually been a very positive and being able to chalk that up as a win or loss, but mostly just being able to, I think when I say wins, like being able to understand that, like, if you did take the L and it was bad, that you were able to learn from it. Like, cause I don't really take like losses as, I don't really take losses. You just learn. So be able to really learn from that. And like how we talked about previously, you know, that window of self reflection at the end of like whatever just happened, be able to go back and self reflect on what just happened and, you know, give yourself some feedback in that self audit is really will reaffirm, you know, your stance, as you just said, on, you know, when challenges arise, be able to hold firm to what's going on, you know, while still having that balance of being able to remain open. Because you don't want to get too polarized where it's like you feel like you get challenged so much that everything you do is right, you know, and we can call that narcissism in a narcissist in some type of way. But what I mean by leaving it open for like kind of like that deviation, it's like, okay, like I know what I've done in the past has enabled me to win and grow. Um, but I'm still going to leave just the door open for any type of deviation that may come. So it's like, if, as you said, when they're being challenged, it's like, okay, I see, this looks familiar. I know how to deal with that. That looks familiar. I know how to deal with that. But there's this little pocket and it's like of unknowing. And it's like, let me just leave that open for anything that may come in a different way. It might be the same thing, but it might look different. So just leaving that door open for it to come in and be able to process that is really important.
Yes, small intentional steps like these can ripple outward, creating both personal and professional harmony.
Oh, I like that. I like
Mhm.
that a lot.
So, thank you, Bradley, for sharing how self awareness and strong boundaries lay the foundation for authentic growth. And to our listeners, may you honor your limits, amplify your values, and cultivate feedback loops that support your vision. Remember, progress isn't just about you what you build, it's about who you become in the process.
I like that. That was real. That was real, Anya.